January 2020. A rural airport in Kerrville, Texas. The lights go off at the Mooney factory and they don't come back on. 80 years of piston speed engineering, the airframe that outran a Cirrus, the airframe that built Mooniac loyalty cults, furloughed by voicemail. That was 6 years ago. Today, the FAA, the EPA, and the parts counter are quietly finishing the job. 10 Mooneys are converging on 2028. 3 different executioners, 1 deadline. And the reason the doctors started dying in 1947 is the same reason these airframes are dying in 2028. The first sign was not a press release or a bankruptcy filing, it was a voicemail. November 12, 2019, the main line at the Mooney plant in Kerrville switched over after midnight. Anyone calling in heard the same flat recording. At this time, all Mooney employees have been furloughed and therefore we cannot take your call. Within minutes, the call logs filled up, 27 calls in the first 10 minutes, everyone routed straight to that message. The Kerrville Daily Times picked it up by afternoon, quoting the same words and tallying the layoffs. 229 people, the entire production and parts staff, suddenly cut loose. Mooney's books had been bleeding for years, but the numbers in 2019 told the story in cold daylight. 4 aircraft were delivered in the first half of the year, down from 14 the year before. By Thanksgiving, the Texas Workforce Commission was processing unemployment claims for nearly every name on the payroll. The shop floor went quiet. No new work orders, no parts moving, just that voicemail echoing across the industry. Then, in early December, a flicker. A memo went out to the skeleton crew, prep the line for a limited run. 4 half-finished airframes, serial numbers M20U 0195 through 0198 were completed and rolled out. AVWeb confirmed the brief reopening, but the mood on the floor was anything but relief. These were not signs of recovery, they were the last rites. The plant was running just enough to clear out pending deliveries, not to restart production. By December 15th, the 4th airframe left the hangar. The lights went dark again. No transition team, no next chapter. The voicemail stayed up, now just a looped reminder that the factory's heart was not beating. For the Mooney fleet, this was the moment the support lifeline snapped. Not with a fire sale or a scandal, but with a recorded message and a 4-aircraft sprint to the exit. Every owner who called in for parts, support, or hope got the same answer: nobody's home. By January 2020, the voicemail at Kerrville was no longer a temporary measure. A press release confirmed it. Mooney Aircraft's manufacturing facility was closed for good. The doors were locked, the line was cold, and the company's assets, tooling, unfinished airframes, and the rights to every part number were sold off to US Financial LLC. The legal paperwork, filed on January 15th, transferred full control to the new owners. Within a week, Johnny Pollock's name appeared on the Texas Business Registry as President and Chief Executive Officer. The message from Pollock was measured. The Mooney legacy would be honored, but the business model had to change. The numbers behind the headlines tell the rest. Over 11,000 Mooney airframes were built since the late 1940s, but just 7 were delivered in the final year. The last 2 unfinished airframes were left on the shop floor, wings and avionics kits still in crates. The WARN notice filed with the Texas Workforce Commission listed 144 job losses, with no advance warning. The SEC Form D for US Financial showed an 80% equity sale, a cash consideration of $4.5 million, and a new corporate entity, Mooney Aircraft LLC, tasked with supporting a fleet of roughly 7,000 active registrations. But this was not a story of a single owner's miscalculation or a foreign investor's retreat. The factory did not collapse in scandal or fraud. It was a door that closed quietly, leaving every Mooney owner with a new reality: no new production, no OEM pipeline, and a support network now run by a holding company with no obligation to restart the line. The lifeline was gone. The question for every owner shifted overnight, from how to keep flying to whether continued operation was even possible. This is the forensic baseline. It is the point where the Mooney fleet became an orphan, and the investigation turns from corporate drama to engineering triage. 3 killers, 10 airframes. From here, the evidence points to structure, compliance, and fuel. The factory's silence is the first verdict. The next, and deadliest, comes from the Wood-era airframes themselves. The first killer is not a regulation or a policy, it's wood. Mooney's earliest wings, M18 Mite, original M20 and M20A, were crafted from spruce and mahogany, glued and pinned before metal took over. For decades, these airframes survived on a mix of owner pride and careful inspection. But time and moisture work in silence. Dry rot, fungus, and hidden delamination threaten the core structure. The Federal Aviation Administration Service Bulletin SB 9103, issued in 1991, spelled out the new reality. Any wood component over 25 years old must be moisture tested, inspected, and if necessary, rebuilt. The inspection is not a quick look. Mechanics start with a tap test, searching for hollow sounds or soft spots along the ribs. Ultrasonic scans follow, probing for internal decay invisible to the naked eye. To reach the critical glue joints, the wing often must be partially disassembled, a 20-hour job just to reach the suspect ribs. If any rib fails, replacement is the only legal path. Each rib, custom milled from certified spruce, costs between $1,200 and $2,500 installed. The average wing holds 12 ribs. The full overhaul, parts and labor, comes in at $28,800. That number is not theoretical, it's the shop quote owners receive in 2024 from one of only 4 A&P shops nationwide, still advertising woodwing Mooney expertise. Lead times for rib kits run 8 to 10 weeks, with some owners waiting through 2 seasons just for parts. The economics are brutal. The hull value of a well-kept M18 or early M20 rarely breaks $20,000. A full wood wing rebuild exceeds that, even before factoring in downtime and the risk of uncovering further corrosion in the tail or spar. For many, the math is simple. Inspection leads to discovery. Discovery leads to a repair bill that cannot be justified. The airframe becomes a hangar queen, parted out or left to sit. The Federal Aviation Administration Airworthiness Directive AD 86-1910, originally focused on tail failures, now hangs in the background, a reminder that structural compliance is not optional. But it's SB 9103 and the economics of wood that close the door first. A veteran woodwing specialist asked about the future of these models, put it bluntly. If you find one rib with dry rot, you're pulling the wing apart. Most shops won't even quote a partial repair anymore. It's full rebuild or nothing, and for most owners, that's the end. The decay is not uniform. Some airframes pass inspection, but the odds shrink every year. The inspection cycle itself, 20 hours labor plus 3 hours for ultrasonic testing at $80 per hour, adds $1,840 before a single part is replaced. Owners who wait, hoping for a cheaper answer, risk a grounding notice at annual. The Federal Aviation Administration does not negotiate with ROT. As the 2028 horizon approaches, the woodwing Mooneys face a binary choice: fund a rebuild that exceeds hull value or accept retirement. The killer is not hidden. It's in the grain, the glue, and the relentless arithmetic of age. A second executioner waits in the Federal Register. Airworthiness Directive 2023-0106, published in November 2023, does not care about nostalgia or owner pride. It cares about numbers: 3,098 Moonies listed by serial, each required to undergo a new elevator balance weight inspection protocol. The language is dry, unsafe condition, potential for in-flight loss of control, but the effect is blunt. Every M20D, M20G, M20K, M20M, M20R, M20TN, every Mustang, every late model Ovation and Acclaim is named. The compliance clock started ticking the day the directive went live. The inspection regimen is not an annual quick look. It begins with a 1-hour check, but the real burden lands if any crack, corrosion, or out-of-tolerance weight is found. The next phase is a full teardown, 6 hours of labor, removal of the elevator, disassembly of the balance system, measurement, reassembly, and documentation. At the FAA standard $80 per hour labor rate, the arithmetic is fixed, $560 per inspection cycle, not counting parts. If the balance weight must be replaced, add $150 for the part, plus shop markup. The cost of compliance is not theoretical. It is on the invoice, line by line. Multiply that by a fleet of 3,098. The FAA's own cost table, published in the Federal Register, projects an industry-wide burden of $245 million for this single directive. That number is not a scare tactic. It is the sum of every owner's required spend, every mechanic's logged hour, every aircraft that must pass or be grounded. There is no alternative method of compliance, no AMOC, no owner-produced part that will satisfy the inspector if the balance weight fails. The directive is mandatory for continued airworthiness. The origin of the directive is rooted in accident history. NTSB records show 712 fatal Mooney accidents since the 1950s, but the elevator balance issue is a late-breaking killer. Cracked weights and undetected corrosion have led to loss of pitch authority, most often in the M20K and M20TN series. The FAA's docket cites multiple in-flight incidents, each one triggering a deeper investigation, each one adding pressure for a fleet-wide solution. The regulator's position is clear, inspection is not optional, and the cost is not negotiable. For the owner, the decision is not just about safety, it is about economics. The hull value of a 1980s M20K may stand at $115,000, but stack the AD compliance on top of engine time between overhauls, woodwing, or spar inspection, and the numbers start to tip. The 1 hour and 6 hour regimen is now a fixture of annual maintenance, a recurring directive that can turn a borderline airframe into a hangar queen. The compliance cost does not care if the airplane flies 10 hours or 100. The spend is mandatory either way. This is the second killer, not a sudden failure, but a slow tightening of the regulatory noose. The FAA does not ground Mooneys by fiat. It grounds them by arithmetic, by making continued operation a choice between mandatory spend and retirement. And for the 10 models on the 2028 list, that choice is coming due. The Elevator Balance Directive is not the last hurdle, but it is the one that turns risk into a line item bill, payable in hours, dollars, and the relentless logic of compliance. Mooney's turbocharged and high compression models, Acclaim, Ovation, Bravo, and the M20K, are bound by a single unyielding line on their type certificates that reads, Minimum Fuel Octane 100 LL leaded. This is not a guideline, but a legal requirement embedded in the FAA official datasheets and checked at every annual inspection. If the fuel in the tanks does not match what is written on the certificate, the airplane is grounded, regardless of how well the engine runs or how full the tanks are. The real obstacle is not just the disappearance of 100 LL at the pump. It is the absence of any legal alternative. No manufacturer has issued a supplemental type certificate or STC for G100UL or UL94 on the TSIO 550G, IO 550G, or TSIO 360L. B1B engines that power these Mooneys. The FAA registry lists only 100 LL for these engines. The EPA 2024 roadmap draws a hard line. By December 31, 2030, 100 LL sales will end in the lower 48 states, with a 90% reduction already scheduled for the end of 2028. The clock is ticking, and there is nothing but 100 LL on the legal plate. Some owners look to Cirrus for hope. Cirrus faced the same challenge with its turbocharged TSIO 550K engines. Their solution was not a new additive or a simple label at the pump. It was a factory retrofit, new fuel pumps, a revised combustion chamber, and an updated electronic control map, all designed for unleaded 100 UL. The retrofit cost $12,000 per engine and required 30 hours of engineering and a full recertification. Cirrus invested in the data, ran the tests, and secured the paperwork. The result was an STC and a legal path to unleaded fuel. But Mooney's engine variants are different. The TSIO-550G and IO-550G use mechanical fuel control, higher compression, and a detonation margin that cannot be managed by software or minor tweaks. Fixing this would mean new pistons, lower compression, and a loss of rated horsepower. Changes that would break the airplane's published performance and void the type certificate. Continental's technical bulletins confirm there is no unleaded pathway in process for these engines. The FAA database lists 0 approved STCS for G100UL or UL94. The EPA phase-out language is blunt. No new 100LL delivered after 2030, no grace period. Without a type certificate amendment or a certified retrofit, these airplanes cannot legally fly on anything but 100LL. There is no drop-in, no workaround. The legal wall comes first, long before the cost. For Mooney owners in 2024, sentiment takes a backseat to hard math. The assembly lines are quiet, parts inventories are shrinking, and every hour flown brings the next inspection or overhaul closer. The engine is the most unforgiving variable. Continental's TSIO 550 overhaul, standard for Acclaim and Ovation models, costs $56,000 for a full teardown and rebuild. The official TBO, time between overhauls, stands at 2,200 hours, but high compression variants often need top-end work sooner. Remanufactured engines can trim a few thousand, but even then the bill rarely dips below $48,000, not counting removal, installation, or shipping. The M20TN Acclaim's last list price was $699,000 in 2019. Today, a well-kept used example fetches about $275,000. That means the engine overhaul alone now accounts for more than 20% of the airplane's current market value. For the M20K231, with hull values near $115,000, the ratio pushes close to half. This is not a hypothetical scenario. Every owner faces the same crossroads before 2028, pay for the next overhaul and compliance cycle, or park the airplane. The market is already adjusting. Blue Book values for turbocharged Mooneys have softened as the 100LL fuel phase out looms and no certified STC exists for G100UL or UL94. There is no legal path for unleaded operation on the TSIO 550, where GIO 550, SAOG or TSIO 360LB1B. Without a type certificate amendment, these aircraft are grounded the moment 100LL disappears from airport tanks. Action steps are mandatory. First, verify compliance with all open airworthiness directives. SB 91-03 for woodwing models, AD 86-19-10 for spar fatigue, AD 2023-01-06 for elevator balance weights. Confirm logbooks are current and required inspections completed by a qualified A&P. Next, request a written quote for the next engine overhaul, including parts, lead times, and shop slot availability. Continental's authorized centers are booking months out, with some components already on allocation. Then check the current fuel approval status for your engine model. If the type certificate lists only 100LL, document any available service bulletins or pending STCs, but do not assume future approval. Finally, audit parts support for critical airframe items, landing gear, control surfaces, and avionics. With the Kerrville plant closed, US Financial LLC holds the remaining proprietary Mooney parts, and supplies are limited. The checklist is simple. Confirm AD compliance for your serial and model. Secure overhaul or reman quotes with written turnaround times. Verify fuel eligibility, no 100LL, no flight. Audit parts support for known failure items. Compare total compliance cost to current hull value. If the cost of overhaul, AD compliance, OI weekend and parts exceeds 60% of the airplane's value, the numbers speak for themselves. Some will fly to TBO and stop. Others will sell before the market closes the door. In 2028, only the arithmetic matters. 3 killers, 10 airframes. The Mooney was built to outrun everything in the sky. It cannot outrun 2028. Today, airworthiness directive compliance, spar integrity, and fuel transition are not abstract risks. They are a hard line on owner math. For many, the price to stay airworthy will exceed the hull. That's not nostalgia, that's the ledger. In the end, the kill list is mechanical, not mythical. Let me know your take in the comments.